Hey guys, Sparkcrypt here on my Hunter World. I've had a lot of guildies ask for me for some of the ways I go about doing my Diamond tributes, so I figured I'd make a video that I can share around. This isn't a speed run or gold making guide, it'll just be focusing on how to make a safe, reliable clear for getting people buffs. So first off, you need the right pet. You need to go and get yourself a wolf or warg so you can have a furious howl. It's extremely powerful and lets you do nice clean pulls. If you don't have one, you can go into Lower Blackrock Spire and pick one up in the high 50s with Furious Howl already learned. You also need to make sure you've got Dash rank 3. Make sure all your pet's abilities are set to manual, as you want to be able to control everything your pet does yourself. That means you want to have key buttons for attack, passive, follow, howl, and dash. Feed my pet, he was very happy. As far as your spec and gear goes, you do not need to be a particular spec to do this. I run it in a completely standard raiding build and have no issues. But if you intend to only use the hunter for these runs, there are several dedicated specs that you can use that pick up certain talents, such as pathfinding, just so you're generally running faster, and improve feign death to reduce your chances of having your FD resisted as you go through. If you opt to go in a raid spec, you can do what I do and have a dedicated set of gear that contains some spell hit. So I'm wearing the Bloodvine goggles and the Bloodvine chest. That gives me 4% spell hit, and it gives me the same effect as having the improved FD talent. There is still a 1% chance to resist, as with all spells, that you cannot negate, but we work around that by being as safe as possible during the runs. I'm also wearing the ZG Rep trinket here, which decreases the cooldown of my feign death and lets me just get through a tad faster. If you don't have any Bloodvine, and you don't want to take the talent, Nat Pagel's Broken Reel from Zolgarub, it has a cooldown, but if you pop this right before you use feign death, that particular FD will have the 1%, will only have the 1% chance to fail. Also highly recommend having the Insignia of the Alliance. You only need to jump into a couple of battlegrounds a week to get to rank 2 and pick that one up. It's extremely useful. Definitely recommend everyone gets that. Profession wise, engineering is basically mandatory. Enchanting is very useful for picking up extra gold from the lower value blues. You can get away with blacksmithing as it can open the door, however the runs are a little more difficult and not as reliable, and you won't have access to bombs and grenades. The items you're going to want to use to run through are going to be some lesser invisibility potions. You will need one of these per run. You need iron grenades to stun certain packs of mobs, large Sephorium charges to open up the door, dense dynamite helps with killing the bugs when you're making things safe, and when getting things ready for your guild, you're going to need some frost oil and a thorium widget to trap slipkick, and an ornate spyglass to assist with getting the eyes to appear when you want them to in order to make them safe. That's pretty much everything you need to get started, so now I'm going to do a complete run through, show a couple of king kills, and hopefully show a few edge case scenarios that you might run into, and how to recover from them, as well as some non-Night Elf specific things. Okay, so going to kick off a quick example run. Not going to use any Night Elf Shadow Meld tricks or anything like that. So before we go in, make sure your pet is summoned, has full health, and that you've got full health and mana. If you are using a Feign Death resist set, like I am, then make sure that's equipped, and make sure you've got your Aspect of the Cheater on. Alright. Now, as soon as we zone in, the first thing we want to do is tell our pet to stay, and then put down a freezing trap before sending our pet to attack that brute. Once he grabs aggro, I'm going to pull him straight back into that trap, which will just stop him damaging our pet while we make our way up here. Now, we shouldn't pull aggro here, but if we do, we can hide behind these pillars, or we can scattershot the mage so that he can't shoot us with a frostbolt and annoy us. We come to this group of 3, we want to throw an iron grenade in the middle of the pack, stuns them and lets us get past, so we can jump up onto here and feign death. As soon as we're out of combat, back up, resummoning our pet and having him stay. This isn't going to be necessary for that run, as the patrol spawned nice and close. Sometimes they spawn down by the door, and it can be faster to send your pet down and pull them back, rather than waiting. We have aggroed here. That happens fairly often. It depends on these dogs, their level and positioning, but feign death's off cooldown, so we'll just use that. As we come to the door, going to resummon our pet, and make sure we have track demons turned on. Once we've got the door open, we're going to use our ornate spyglass. This is going to force the eye down the bottom here to render faster and come up to us without us having to run down. There it is. Back up so we don't aggro it, and we'll shotgun mark on that. Once he starts to leave, you can send your pet in. Don't do it too early, as we definitely don't want to aggro that eye. And just going to howl as we go past to make sure these guys attack the pet instead of me. Now you want to run into this corner right here and feign death. As soon as you're out of combat, stand back up again, but don't summon your pet. As long as you stand in this corner, the eye won't aggro on you, but if you bring your pet out, it will. Now, as soon as the eye does go past, bring our pet out and send him down there, and then back up the top.
I can't cast that yet. That spell isn't ready yet.
And he should despawn momentarily. And we will feign death.
I can't cast
Get our pet back up and heal him. Now the eye's passed out of render distance, so we do have some time before it comes back down. But we do want to be reasonably quick here. So we're going to send our pet in on these bugs. Run up and howl, so they definitely attack the pet, not us, and then back towards the Reaver. As we approach, looking around the corner to see where Slip is. Now a Night Elf could just feign death and Shadow Meld, but if you're not a Night Elf, you're going to want to jump up here before you feign death, so that we can easily avoid Slip Kick as he does his patrol. If we weren't trying to keep eyes alive, we could actually go straight into the pool here. But we do need to wait and see where this eye is and make sure our timing lines up properly. And we can see it's on its way down, so unfortunately we wouldn't have time to pick it up. So we're just going to wait until things line up so that we can get up the top without aggroing the eye or worrying about Slip Kick. Now this safe spot up here does require a bit of movement to stay totally safe. Basically you want to be on the left hand side until Slip Kick gets there, and then you run over to the right. If we were not trying to keep the eyes alive here, we would just have killed the eyes that went past, but as we want to do a nice clean run and not have to wait 30 minutes, we're just going to have to wait a little bit for the timing. Sometimes you get here and everything's lined up perfectly, sometimes you've got to wait. From the way things are going, with any luck we may get the very next pass. Okay, that looks good enough. I'm happy with that. You might want to wait for a bit of a safer one, but I'm pretty confident that we won't have an issue. So I'm going to send my pet in on that guy there, and then over to the far Warlock. He should despawn he has, and then we're going to feign death. Now, depending on where the eye is on its path, it might have dropped out of our render distance and thus take a few seconds to come back down, but we've got 5 minutes of feign death, so we'll just have to sit here and wait. The timing on this one is not particularly great. A lot of the times you'll come in here and you'll be able to pull straight away, the eye will come down, you'll have fantastic timing. Other times you just got to hang around and wait for a few things to line up. But it is fairly safe and reliable as long as you're careful. And I can see the eyes coming back down now. Now we do have to keep an eye on Slip Kick as well, as we cannot use our invisibility potion while he's near us. So hopefully things line up well and that won't be an issue. I won't be able to use the invisibility potion until he is gone past, so we could get very unlucky depending on how fast this eye goes, but we will soon see. Unfortunately, that one didn't work out. We really wanted to have gone when the eye went down and Slip Kick was the other end of the room, but not a great deal we could do about that, unfortunately. Okay, I've jumped ahead a couple of minutes. This one was possibly the worst timing I've ever had. Curse of recording, I guess. But sometimes that happens. You just need to wait for things to line up. Slip Kick is over there, the Eye of Kurog's out of the way, so we are going to use our invisibility potion and run up. That's about a worst case scenario for time waiting, but we still had plenty of time in our feign death, and it's a lot faster than waiting 30 minutes for eye respawns. So we'll make our way up to the top here. Now we don't have time to do this pull before the eye comes back, so my favourite way to deal with that is just to hop into this little corner here and do a slash sit. And you'll see the eye will make its way all the way up to us. And won't see us past here, and off it goes. That should work with all character models. If you prefer, you can just feign death in the middle of this ramp instead. So we're going to come quite far down the ramp, get our pet to stay, and give him a bit of healing. We do need to be reasonably quick because of the eye there, and that should be plenty. I'll drop a trap to slow some of these guys down, and I'll send my pet straight in. Once he's halfway up the ramp, I'll get him to sprint. He can aggro these guys, but it's no big deal. He hasn't. Now I might aggro them, so I'm going to howl on the way past to make sure that the pet picks those up and they don't aggro onto me. Now, running along the right hand wall here as hard as we can so our pet despawns as quickly as possible. We'll feign death and get out of combat. Whenever you use a trap, it pays to wait a few extra seconds for things to reset and make sure you don't get put back into combat. Now we've still got our track demons up, so we'll see if we can get lucky and double check. There's our Wandering Eye of Kilrog there. However, you will always see in the chat if you accidentally aggro them. If you do, the run is basically stuffed. So, if you're not confident with leaving the eyes alive, or you don't want to wait there, and it's easier for you to just get to this point here, this is where you would wait for 30 minutes or so for the eyes to respawn before proceeding and killing the king. We don't need to do that though, so we'll just carry on. Once we've got our pet back up, send him for this Reaver here, have him dash straight away so it gets back off cooldown for our next pull, and howl and away we go. They've crippled me, but that's no big deal. That's why I'm wearing the trinket. And as soon as we're out of combat, bring our pet back up. So at this point we want to make sure we've got track beasts on to keep track of all these dogs here. There can be a few issues with them depending on their positioning. There's a roaming pack of 3, which can cause some problems. However, they can be dealt with. You can throw some grenades at them. You can feign death at an earlier point in this corner over here. You really do need to just play it by ear and see what the position the dogs are in. But once we've got our pet to stay, we're going to send it in on Crush, and then as soon as he aggroes, straight to that Reaver and have him dash. He has been stunned, so keep a careful eye on the pet's health. If it looks like the pet's going to drop, which in this case we will be fine, then we might need to abort and go into the corner over there and rethink our options. Pet's despawned and we're all good and clear. Now, this timing has worked really well for us, and this pack of dogs here is exactly where we want them to be. You can kill them if you need to, however it is vastly preferable to leave them alive, as that way it's one less set of respawns you need to worry about, and the first time you kill something that's going to respawn, that's when the 2-hour timer on your instance starts. So I'm just going to sit down, get full health and mana, and then we will kill the king. So I've swapped out of my resist gear and into my normal raid gear. You might want to keep your ZG trinket on, or neck piece, sorry, if you want to have a little bit extra time for feign death. But bosses are always going to have a higher chance to resist regardless. So this is going to be quite a slow but a very safe kill. We're going to focus on draining Cho's mana and then worry about the king. So there's 3 kinds of Cho. There's the priest, the shaman, and the mage. The mage, you can basically ignore his mana as he only does damage, whereas the shaman and the priest can heal the king, so it's important to drain the mana with Viper Sting. Now for the pull, we want to line up on this line right here and send our pet in on the king. Now when these guys aggro, or he reaches between the 2 of them, but before he hits the king, we are going to tell the pet to follow. So we're not going to call passive. Passive would pull him back to here, and we want him to follow us instead. That way he will try and run up here, and he'll despawn basically instantly, which is what we want. So we're waiting for the aggro. There it is. We'll get him to sprint, and then we go stand in this corner, run back to here, summon our pet, have him stay, and howl. So that's brought the pet back in and put the aggro from us onto the pet. So of course we are going to do some damage to the king, because silly not to.
I need to get closer.
But mostly we need to be making sure we get Viper Sting onto Cho here. You can get a couple per run, but keep an eye on the king and always feign death while he is basically still out of range. One thing to note is that Viper Sting doesn't actually cause any aggro, so you need to make sure you land a shot as well as the Viper Sting onto Cho to have him turn back around. He's nice and slow, so once you sort of get a feel for the speed of the king and Cho, you can keep them apart pretty easily and keep your pet safe. Now you can chase the king and get more damage in, but we're doing this nice and safe. There's minimal risk. I'm going to drop another Viper Sting on Cho here, and then stop his lightning bolt before I feign death and sit down for a drink. I do have some mage water with me, which I picked up out of Battleground. Very useful if you got it. Otherwise, Morning Glory Dew or Mana Biscuits are really useful. So we're just going to keep shooting at the king, and we're going to time our multi-shot to pick up Cho as well before we put our Viper Sting on him. And then we're going to get him again. Now ideally we didn't want him to turn and face us. Now we're going to have to feign death with him quite close. I want some time to drink, so I'm actually going to send my pet out, and Cho's going to cast at him, and then I'm going to call him back. And that's going to gain me a few seconds, so I can shoot Cho without having to have gotten back up. Now, he has de-aggro, he has changed aggro, even though he's not looking at me. It's a bit annoying, as it meant I didn't have time to do an aim shot on the king straight away, so I just opened with a multi-shot. I'll do the aim shot now. And of course make sure you keep your hunter's mark on him, which I let drop. So Cho's losing his mana nice and quickly, which is great. We're going to get another Viper Sting on him, and then we're going to feign death. As long as you're feigning death with these guys out of your range, I recommend a weak aura to check it, you're never going to get a resist. So here's the king. Always start your aim shot by the time he gets to this bush here, and that way he should never reach your pet.
That's still recharging.
Alright, now he's taking his time turning around, so we're just going to watch the king, and feign death. Now again, I want a little bit more time, so I'm sending my pet out, and then back in. That just has Cho stop and cast, and we're approaching the point where Cho just isn't a threat anymore.
I'm out of range.
And he is now basically neutered, he's got no mana, so we are free reign to mess our rotation up, but just start damaging the king as much as we can. Get our Hunter's Mark back up. Make sure you keep putting Viper Sting on Cho. If you don't, he will regain mana and start being a pain. And now what you saw there, that was a little bit too close. That opened up the possibility for a resist. They are very recoverable, but to start with, you basically just don't want to risk them at all. So nice and easy. Now I am going to let my pet possibly take a hit or two here, because I want those extra shots. But he can take it. He's a tough boy. Watching the king. Cho can't cast on me, so it's safe to change back around. Now, this is where you have the disadvantage of Cho having no mana. You aren't able to have him stop and cast. So you do need to pay attention to make sure he doesn't get in and melee your pet. You can use Concussive Shot in him to slow him down and get yourself a bit of extra time where you need it. And otherwise, we're just carrying on with the rotation. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here and let Cho cast, which I shouldn't really do.
I'm out of range. It's still recharging.
But we'll kill the king on this next rotation, so it's no big deal. So nice and slow and easy, very, very low risk. And that's the fight done. So when you get the Mage Cho, you can still drain his mana if you are having trouble with his fireballs, but otherwise you can basically ignore him. When you get the Priest Cho, it's essentially the same fight, but it's very important you don't let him get close to you, as he is able to fear. I think the Shaman Cho can as well, but I don't recall seeing it, so who knows. With the Priest Cho as well, a little bit of an advanced technique is you can actually let him cast his Mind Blast on you a few times, as it uses a lot of his mana to do so. Now, as always, the first thing we've done before anything else is go and get rid of Chrome Crush. You want to make sure you do that before you get the King buff for a couple of reasons. First of all, you can't talk to him and send him back if you have the King buff. And second, if he is still standing there when you spawn the chest, you get less loot. So now we're going to grab our sweet loot. Which is pretty good. Well, unyielding more than the... Yeah, that was a pretty good chest. And then we'll head up to the king and see what he's got for us. There can be a book that spawns here, so make sure you check that. You won't be able to pick it up until you've got the king buff. And we'll see what we got from the king. Oh, very good loot. We've got the blade. So we got a bunch of shards and a bunch of good stuff to vendor. So that's fantastic. And what we'll do now is we'll head back down through to the instance and we'll check that our eyes are nice and safe as we left them. we'll kill some bugs, and then we'll clean up the ogres at the end. Okay, so we're in that same instance. We've killed the king, all is well, and we've gotten our loot. We've sent Crush down. Now we need to make the instance safe so that we can bring other people through. So the first things we need to worry about are these reavers right here. Now you can log out where we stand, log back in, that will clear your king buff, and that will give you the ability to kite these guys back up to the top here, and you're just going to kill them the exact same way that you did the king. Very easy to do, no real point showing that, it's just a slower and easier version of the king fight. I find that takes a little bit too much time, so I actually like to do these guys at the same time as the pack downstairs. If you're struggling with that, then by all means, just kill these guys first. But to maximize the amount of time we can bring people into the instance, then we want to get them both done together. So as we're running past, there's quite often a chest spawn here. Not one this one time around though. And we can see our previously marked eye, so that's the same eye we had before. It didn't despawn, it didn't cause us any problems. And then we have a slip kick there. So first thing we want to do is to stop slip kick. So this is why we brought our thorium widget and our frost oil. So we'll open this up and we will complete that quest. And we will freeze him. So that's that done. Now we want to do this nice and early, because as you can see, even though I've got the king buff and he is frozen, I cannot click him to get a buff. It takes a couple minutes for that to wear off, generally with no one in the vicinity. So if you freeze him straight away, then by the time you've dealt with the bugs and the reavers, he's good to go. Next up is the bugs. Now if you're having trouble with slip kick and the eye, you can do this exact method from the other side. However, it does mean that the timer for respawn starts then, so I do recommend doing it at the end if you are able. So all we're going to do is resummon our pet. We're going to drop an explosive trap. We're going to make sure the bugs are within volley range, and then we're going to make sure we are at full health because we don't want to die. So we'll send our pet in, and we're going to wait for all of these bugs to group up together. As soon as they have, we're going to use our volley. As they hit the explosive trap, we're going to use our dense dynamite, which is going to finish them off. Now make sure you leave your pet out for the moment so this poison fades off and you get him back to full health. And while we're doing that, we're just going to run back here and we're going to check out this other eye and make sure it's the same eye that we had at the start of the run and that we're not going to have any issues with Voidwalkers. And we can see there, yep, there's our eye with his mark. So now that Flaffer's all nice and healthy, we are actually going to ask him to leave us be for a bit. And then we're going to deal with the Reaver packs. So these two Reavers here and the ones upstairs are the only remaining things in the instance that needs to be killed. Now once you've killed the bugs, I usually like to set a 2-hour timer on my phone, or of course you can do a stopwatch, but because we're going to log in and out, that's a little bit less accurate. But essentially from when you kill the first bug, that's when the 2-hour timer starts for bringing people into the instance before you need to start re-clearing. So from here, we are going to log out in order to get rid of our king buff, and then we'll come back in and take care of these ogres. Okay, we've logged out and we've logged back in. We're in the same instance as before, in the exact same spot. And now these Reavers here, they have little swords, so they are angry with us. So because we've left the 2 Reavers upstairs, we're going to do all 4 of these together. Now, there's a couple ways you can go about this. You can drop an explosive trap to get a little bit extra damage on here, but because we want to do this super safe, we are going to use a frost trap, which is going to slow these guys down. That way we can get upstairs and pull the other guys and get them all into a group nice and risk-free. So we'll put that down. And again, remember we want our pet to be at full health, not have any poisons or debuffs, and to be dismissed at this time. So we're just gonna pull this guy with an aim shot, get a little bit of damage on him, and now I've actually been hit through the wall there, which is not great, but I got plenty of time, and he's been hit by that frost trap. So normally I actually don't keep aspect of the cheater on for that pull for that exact reason. So it is generally a good idea to leave it switched off. But those guys are making their way up to us. Now as we reach here, we're going to bring our pet out and immediately get into stay.
I can't cast that yet.
And then we are going to do the same pull we did when we were clearing to the king before. We're just going to keep an eye on this door and make sure the ogres aren't coming to kill us. And there they are. So we're going to run past and put a howl on us. Now unfortunately I didn't get a shot on that second ogre, which I always like to do, which means he's now going to aggro to poor Flapper as well, which increases the risk of him dying, but we were fast enough that it wasn't a problem. And I want to slow this guy down a little bit, as he's way in front of his mates. So I'm just going to scatter shot him and concussive shot him, because ideally we want these in a group. And we can see we've got all of these ogres heading towards us. And now we are just going to do exactly the same thing we did with the king, except we're going to do it with ogres. Now, if you're confident that you've got this under control, this is usually when I start inviting people in. Because as long as you are doing this kite back and forth, there's nothing in the instance that can hurt them that they shouldn't already know how to avoid. If you were bringing new people in, or you wanted to escort people, then you'd finish this up beforehand. Okay, so now we've managed to get a shot on every ogre, which is what we want, because we're going to summon our pet down here, and we actually don't want them to aggro on our pet straight away. We want them to aggro onto us. So even though we've done the howl, these guys are all still targeting me. And we'll just drop off there. And if we can catch up to this guy, we'll slow him down a little bit. Now, because we've pulled 2 different packs, the aggro can be a little bit finicky. You can get these guys just turning around for no reason. You'll shoot 1, 3 of them will turn around, and then the next round they won't. So you just need to keep an eye on where they are. But they move so slowly and are so easy to kite around that it shouldn't be a problem whatsoever. So we're going to see how much damage we can get on this guy as quickly as possible. I'm going to switch targets to that guy there, because we have multiple targets for the shot there. Don't go too far or your pet will despawn, and while that can of course be recovered, you can either run over to the other side and summon him over there, or you can just kite these guys around the arena and get back up to where you want to be. There's just no point to it. They'll die. As you can see, I'm trying to play this nice and safe.
I cannot use that item yet.
For the most part, I'm minimizing resist chances, and yeah, these guys are quite easy to do. If you do get a resist as they come up on you, all you need to do is jump off the edge here and run away. You do always have the option of just feign death and resetting the entire encounter, but keep in mind if you've brought people into the instance at this point and you do that, then you do risk them getting killed. So just keep that in mind. Another option you have is if you go and talk to Mizzle at any point and get the king buff, it will instantly reset all of them. So there's lots of reset buttons in here, but if you do use them, you have the potential to be putting people in danger who are already in the instance.
It's not ready yet.
Actually, I'll switch this trinket out, which I haven't really bothered this entire time with, but why not? Now this is always a dangerous situation. There's one very far ahead and it's easy to tunnel vision on him, but if we look back, yep, that guy there has actually switched. So when that happens, I'm going to do as I did before. I'm just going to slow him down a little bit. I've got to make sure the rest of them aren't attacking my pet. And then I'm going to scatter and slow this guy down just to let everything else catch up. And we can even drop down here and head this way. See, now they're all going to try and come down this ramp. And once they're in a bit of a group, that's when I'll feign death. It's not perfect, but it's closed the gap substantially. So always be checking where they are and make sure you prioritize hitting anything that can hurt your pet. So we do still have one a little bit far in front. So we might have the same situation where we have one turn around. But they're very slow and not very dangerous. So we're just going to do the same thing with this guy. Just going to whack him. He's not far enough to care about jumping down the bottom. And he is about to reach a low health pool, so he's going to slow down substantially and become a non-threat. Now, one thing with these guys as well is, as I've been saying, their aggro can be a little bit silly. So avoid getting out of feign death until they're a good distance away, as sometimes they'll just decide to turn around and grab you. I believe they have an inbuilt aggro dump, and if that happens, they will just pick you or the pet. That's a little bit annoying, but oh, we've got that one, so we're okay. And see this guy, even though he did turn around before, he's moving so slowly that we just don't care. And we're going to finish this guy off instead of worrying about him. So we're going to scatter him. And then he's actually close enough we should get, yep, double shot on there. We'll do an arcane, that should kill him. Not quite, but no big deal. They're all nice and low now. And by this point you've had 3, 4, 5 people come in and get their buffs. So there isn't much of a reason to particularly hurry. I'm just going to kill that guy. Just probably going to have one of these guys turn around, but they're very easy to deal with. Yep, so we've got one coming for me, one for the pet. Just going to slow him down. And we should be able to kill him quite easily. And my auto shot stopped, which is annoying, but look at that, plenty of time. Flaffer might take a hit here, but he's a good boy, you can take it. Okay, and that is it. That's your instance fully clear, fully safe. There are a few packs that I recommend marking, so that particularly if you're going to sell the instance to people, you can put in your advertisement, just tell people avoid the marked mobs. That way they know which mobs are going to kill them, and they can't blame you if they run into them. But guildies generally know what they should and shouldn't hit. So I will teleport us back to the start and mark those up, and then we are done. Okay, we're back at the start of the instance, just to quickly show which mobs you need to mark so people know what to avoid. All of these guys here are nice and friendly. I mean, I've got the king buff, so everything is friendly. But this group of 3 here will attack you if you don't have the king buff, so people just need to come along this section here and pass by these 3 friendly fellas instead. Beyond that, we've got Cromcrush here in the middle. You can technically kill him if you want, I never bother. People can just go around. And then you've got Fingers, who I've stopped in the courtyard, and hopefully other people extend the same courtesy so people don't have to wait for him when he gets stopped in the middle of the ramp. Basically, once you reach this point, because we've made the eyes nice and friendly and they can't attack us, it's just free and clear. There's no more dangerous mobs in the entire instance. You just run straight through to the end, pick up your king buff, come back through and get your buffs. And that is all there is to it. It takes a bit of practice, you'll die a few times, but it's very doable. It doesn't take long to get it down pat, and once you do, it's great for making gold, and your guildmates really appreciate the buffs. So I'll just add on a few things at the end here, mostly about the dogs that patrol around the king during that fight there, and how you can deal with those. But beyond that, that's it. Happy murdering. Okay, so just wanted to go over a situation you might find yourself in, which is dealing with the dogs on their patrol. As I'm sure you're all aware, people only tend to upload their runs to YouTube that go really, really well. This is one that was not going particularly well for me. My pet has lost a lot of health, which limits my options. I've got the mage and king separated, and I've just noticed that I have the pack of dogs coming towards me. However, this is recoverable, and I'll show you how to do it. So first thing to do is to always make sure Track Beast is turned on so you can see when those 3 appear at the bottom of the courtyard. I've noticed just now that they're coming, and so I'm going to immediately make my way as far down the platform as I can and attempt to get Cho and the king to group up together.
I need to get closer.
This is going to involve a little bit of risk, as I'm going to have to wait for Cho to basically be on top of me before I do anything. If I get a resist here, it would basically be the end of the fight, but I quite luckily don't. So now I am just keeping an eye on the position of the bosses and the position of the dogs, so that I can make sure they don't meet up. If those dogs pull, it is the end of the fight. You cannot complete the fight with those in play. So I want them to come back fairly early, so I'm not trying to do damage here, I just want them to turn around. So I'm going to multi-shot and immediately hide, and get all the way out of the way so I can see where the dogs are and where the bosses are. And yep, I've feigned death. So now they're heading back, the dogs aren't aggroed, and now I'm going to position myself around this corner here so the dogs won't aggro on me. You want to do this at full health because I'm going to need to tank a few fireballs from Cho, as my pet does not have the health to do it for me. So as soon as I have started my cast on the bosses, I'm now watching the dogs, making sure I'm not spending excess time getting hit by fireballs, and now I'm back around the corner. I've only lost half my health, and the fight is back on track. So I'll just continue from here and kill the boss as per normal.